Heracleion, the ancient Egyptian city that disappeared beneath the sea. Imagine standing on the shore of an ancient Egyptian city. In front of you are enormous temples. Merchants are moving through crowded streets. Ships from different parts of the Mediterranean are entering the harbor. Priests are heading towards sacred temples, while ordinary people hurry about their daily lives. This is a wealthy and important city, a place where goods, people, and money constantly move. Now imagine that centuries pass, and almost nothing remains. No ruins rising from the desert, no massive columns visible on the horizon, no streets or buildings on the surface. The city simply disappears. Its streets end up beneath the water. For thousands of years it exists only in ancient texts, almost becoming a legend. Then, at the beginning of the 21st century, archaeologists discover it. This was Heracleion, one of the most mysterious submerged cities of ancient Egypt. And the most astonishing part is that archaeologists did not find only stones. Beneath the water were enormous statues, gold jewelry, coins, pottery, architectural fragments, and even remains of ancient ships. How did an entire city end up on the seafloor? And why did people forget about it for thousands of years? The story of Heracleion begins long before Alexander the Great founded Alexandria. The city was located in the Nile Delta, near the Mediterranean coast. Its ancient Egyptian name was Thonis, while Greek sources referred to it as Heracleion. For ancient Egypt, this was a strategically important location. Ships arriving from the Mediterranean passed through this region on their way into Egypt. Foreign merchants could encounter the Egyptian world here before reaching the country's major inland centers. Heracleion was both a port and a religious center. Important temples stood there. One of the most significant was associated with Amun, one of the most important gods in ancient Egyptian religion. The city was also fascinating because it stood at the meeting point of different cultures. Egyptians, Greeks, and other peoples of the Mediterranean interacted here long before anyone used the modern idea of international trade. Ships arrived in the harbor. They carried wine, olive oil, pottery, and other goods. Egypt exported grain and other valuable products. You can imagine how busy the city must have been. But gradually, its importance began to change. After Alexandria was founded by Alexander the Great in 331 BC, the situation changed dramatically. The new city quickly became the major political and commercial center of Egypt. Heracleion gradually lost part of its former importance. But its disappearance was not simply the result of people abandoning the city. The ground beneath it was changing. And this is where the story becomes especially fascinating. Heracleion stood in an extremely unstable natural environment. The Nile Delta is made up largely of soft sediments. Sea levels changed over time. Earthquakes struck the region. Tsunamis could hit the coast. Flooding could become destructive, and the ground itself could sink. Over time, the city began to disappear beneath the water. Some structures collapsed, others tilted. Buildings were damaged and gradually covered by layers of mud and sediment. Eventually, much of Heracleion was completely submerged. The city disappeared from the surface, but something even more remarkable happened afterward. People gradually forgot exactly where it had been. Ancient texts continued to mention the city, but there was no visible city anymore. Centuries passed. The coastline changed. Generations came and went. And eventually, Heracleion became almost a legendary place. Researchers knew about it mainly from ancient writings, but no one could confidently point to its location. Then the search began. In the late 20th century, French underwater archaeologist Frank Gaudiot and his team began systematically investigating the area off the Egyptian coast. It was an incredibly difficult task. The water was often murky. Ancient structures were buried beneath layers of sediment. Traditional archaeology was almost impossible. You could not simply take a shovel and start digging. Researchers had to use specialized technology. Underwater archaeologists employed geophysical techniques, including magnetometers and other instruments capable of detecting structures beneath the seabed. Gradually, traces began to appear. Then archaeologists realized that they had not found a single isolated ruin. They had found an entire ancient city. Underwater, they discovered enormous stone statues. Some were several meters tall. They found images of Egyptian gods and rulers. They uncovered architectural elements from temples. They found coins, jewelry, amulets, pottery, and countless other objects. But the statues were among the most impressive discoveries. They lay on the seafloor, covered in sediment, almost as if the city had simply stopped in the middle of its existence. Among the discoveries were colossal figures connected with royal and religious symbolism. Some objects were remarkably well preserved. The underwater environment and the lack of oxygen in certain layers helped protect materials that might have disappeared much faster on land. But archaeologists encountered another surprise. They discovered numerous remains of ships. This provided additional evidence of how important Heracleion had been as a port. Beneath the water were traces of an ancient harbor. This was a major transportation and trading center. Ships arrived here carrying people and goods. Heracleion was part of a huge Mediterranean trade network. And then something happened that changed everything. Why did the city end up underwater? Researchers believe there was probably not one single catastrophe. Instead, several natural factors may have combined. Earthquakes could damage buildings. Tsunamis could send enormous waves toward the city. Flooding could increase the destruction. And waterlogged ground could lose its ability to support heavy structures. When large buildings stood on unstable soil, the ground could literally collapse beneath their weight. Entire sections of the city may have sunk rapidly. The process may not have happened in a single night. It could have continued over years or even decades. But for the people living there, the consequences were devastating. Imagine watching the streets slowly turn into flooded ground, water entering buildings, temples beginning to collapse, families abandoning their homes, and a place that had once been one of the most important ports in the region gradually becoming a submerged ruin. But another mystery remains. Why did Heracleion disappear so completely from human memory? Ancient texts preserved references to the city. But the physical city itself was gone. Water covered its streets. Centuries passed. The landscape changed. And eventually, Heracleion became almost forgotten. Only archaeology was able to bring it back to the surface. And this leads to a remarkable thought. We often imagine lost cities as places hidden deep inside jungles or buried beneath deserts. But sometimes lost cities are underwater, and the sea can preserve history in ways that the land cannot. The underwater discoveries at Heracleion revealed just how sophisticated ancient Egyptian trade networks were. They helped researchers better understand the relationship between Egyptian and Greek communities, and the objects found beneath the sea revealed details about everyday life. What people bought, what they traded, what they believed, which gods they worshipped, and what kinds of ships they used. But perhaps the most powerful part of the story is the sense of time. Thousands of years ago, people walked through these streets. They talked. They traded. They prayed. They built homes. They raised children. They had ordinary lives. They had no idea that their city would one day become a legend. They could never have imagined that future archaeologists would study their coins and jewelry. And they certainly could not have imagined that their city would eventually lie beneath the sea. Today, research at Heracleion continues. Every new discovery can add another piece to the history of the city. And this matters because most ancient cities did not disappear because someone deliberately destroyed them. Sometimes, cities simply lose their battle against time. Earthquakes, floods, environmental changes, shifting trade routes, political transformations, and eventually, forgetfulness. That is how civilizations can disappear. Heracleion reminds us how fragile even wealthy and powerful cities can be. Once, merchants from across the Mediterranean arrived here. Temples stood throughout the city. Markets were busy. Ships filled the harbor. And today, much of that world lies beneath the water. Perhaps this is not the only city waiting to be discovered. The Mediterranean contains countless ancient settlements and shipwrecks. Beneath the water may be objects capable of changing our understanding of history. But Heracleion has already given archaeologists something extraordinary. It proved that a city that seemed almost legendary was real. And perhaps the most beautiful part of the story is exactly that. The city disappeared. People forgot about it. But it never truly vanished. It was simply hidden somewhere no one was looking. On the seafloor. For thousands of years, Heracleion remained silent. Then archaeologists found its statues. They discovered its temples. They brought its artifacts back into the light. And a city that had disappeared from human memory began to speak again. But now one question remains. How many other ancient cities are still lying beneath the water? And what secrets are they still waiting to reveal?